So this session of In Conversation with is with Doreen Bogdan-Martin. Good afternoon, Doreen. You are director of the Telecommunication Development Bureau of ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. This is the sector, as you call it, at the organization that is promoting international cooperation in the delivery of technical access, technical assistance, and also in the creation and the development of telecommunication and ICT networks in developing countries. You were elected to this position 2 years ago, and if my information is correct, you are the first woman to hold an elected office at the ITU. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And we are very honored to have you with us on this program today.
Thank you.
This year, the COVID crisis is disrupting the tradition as it has been disrupting a number of aspects of our life. The virus, as we know, has already infected more than 30 million people. So it's a time where internet access is really important. And it's a time also where we realize that portions of the population around the world does not have internet access. As the recent UN roadmap on digital cooperation has emphasized, this is an issue, this issue of internet access that we need to solve, to address as quickly as possible. And that's where you, others as well, but definitely you and your team are coming in. So as a starting point in this conversation, could you tell us a little bit, what's your sense of how common internet is being used in the various parts of the world?
Thank you. Thank you, Johnny, for this opportunity. And indeed, I wish I was with you physically in New York face to face, but thanks to connectivity, we are able to connect in this way. And we're the lucky ones. Today, half the world is not connected. When we look, for example, at mobile broadband subscriptions, we have 83 out of 100 subscriptions. And on the one hand, that might sound good, but when we look at the numbers, it's actually half the world that's not connected, which is just unbelievable when we think about it today. And when we look deeper, we see that those divides, we have the developed countries and the developing countries, of course, but even within some of the most developed nations, we also have divisions between rural communities, urban communities. And then when you look at developing countries, and in particular the least developed countries, we only have 4 out of 5 connected. So, the highest sort of penetration rates in least developed countries are around 19%. And so that's where the gap is really striking. And I would also add within that gap, we have a gender digital divide, which stands this year at about 17%. So it's not really a simple divide. I mean, of course, Africa is less connected, Southeast Asia less connected, but there are divides within divides.
So if I hear you correctly, there has been some progress recently, but still there are really billions of people today that are missing internet connectivity. And while, as we know, internet access and internet connectivity is really key to the access to an increasing range of services, from education to health to finance. So that is, as the UN roadmap is indicating, something that we need to look into and that we try to address. Now, that is also an area where you have the governments, you have the business, you have civil society. One would think that this is a matter for the government to address, but what's your view on this? What do you think, and what would be the roles of the governments on the one hand, the business, and also civil society in addressing this issue of internet connectivity, in trying to bridge the gap that you have mentioned previously?
Well, I would say first, we need to remember that the gap is not just a technology gap. So it's not just about giving someone a connection. It's about everything that comes with it. And so if you try to empower someone by giving them connectivity, if they don't have the necessary skills, that connectivity is almost meaningless. So just to add, I mean, the importance of digital skills has to be stressed. Now, in terms of roles, I think when we look at the digital divide, And the fact that today estimates show that if we want to close the gap by 2030, the deadline for the 2030 agenda, we need $428 billion. And that's just for the connectivity. So we need a huge amount of investment. We need a huge amount of creativity. We need new business models. It's not going to be the governments alone that can do this. We need the governments to set the enabling frameworks to attract the needed investments. We need the business interests, the private sector to come forward. And we need civil society. We need local communities. We need them to help us in crafting the best policies and ensuring that what's put out there actually responds to the needs of the local communities.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's obvious when I hear you that there is a role for governments, there is a role, as you just said, for the business, there is a role for civil society to close the gap and to find, the capital, the funding, that huge funding that you were just mentioning. Now, in this specific area that we're discussing, internet connectivity, this matter which needs this technical issue, but more than that, which needs to be addressed urgently, as you were mentioning, for the reasons that we have discussed. What are the success factors of the partnerships? And conversely, what are the challenges that the companies, the governments, the public-private sector that comes to those partnerships need to anticipate and to overcome? What are the success factors? What are the challenges that they need to think about?
So I would say that we need to make sure that we're not operating in a siloed fashion anymore. I think going back to what you said in the beginning about COVID and how COVID has, in fact, proven the case for connectivity in a way that we never could have imagined, and everything overnight from education to working to shopping, moving online. So that case for connectivity is absolutely there. I would say one of the biggest challenges that we need to face, and we have to support governments, is to look at digital holistically. So to take really a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach, and not look at digital in a siloed way, looking at it by agriculture, by education, by health, but looking at it really as a cross-cutting enabler. Because if we continue fragmenting, we will never be able to scale and be truly transformational in the way that I believe we really can. I think we're at this kind of critical moment for connectivity where the understanding is finally there. The excitement about the potential is finally there, but we need to get it right. So that sort of digital transformation that's needed at the government level and that holistic view is going to be absolutely critical.
Now, again, when we look at this issue of internet connectivity holistically, not in the side of the board, but holistically, and this may be my last question to you, but it's an important one. What are, in your view, the practical steps that need to be taken by those that can contribute to solving this issue? What is it that, from a practical perspective, we can do? Again, when I hear you talking about technical aspects, when I hear you talking about the skills, when I remember the figure that you mentioned in terms of the funding needs, I mean, these are really significant challenges. How, in your view, and again, bearing in mind, you are the one who is working on this telecommunication development, so you face this issue. What are the practical steps that you would advise us to take?
Well, I would say, first of all, status quo is not an option. No more business as usual. I think this is really the moment for the industry and governments to be innovative, to be bold. I would say also to be action-oriented. I think the digital cooperation roadmap that you mentioned before provides a good framework for all stakeholders to come around, rally around this framework as we move forward. I think one of the critical elements will be cooperation and collaboration, because the ITU can't do it alone. We all need to work together and to bring together our let's say, individual and collective strengths, because that's really what it's going to take. We need to be making sure that connectivity is affordable. In some cases, it's still up to 40% of monthly GNI in some countries and some villages. We need to tackle that affordability issue on the service side. We need to tackle the affordability on the device side. We need to always keep people in the focus and people's needs, and make sure that we are focusing as well on stimulating on the demand side. So making sure that local content is created in local languages, so that it really can be used by the people that need it. And I would also add, as we look forward, and this is also something that we've seen in a very striking way as a result of COVID, we have to keep in mind the safety and security of users. We had so many young people coming online for the first time much earlier than many parents would have ever imagined for their children, but they had to, because schools were not physically open, so the kids had to come online sooner. And we saw this huge spike in cyberbullying and online harassment. We saw lots of cybersecurity breaches. So I do think when we look forward, we look to the future, we have to remember that trust and security is absolutely essential. And then perhaps the last thing I wanted to say, coming back to the Sustainable Development Goals, digital is here to stay, and connectivity is the, I would say, critical enabler that will give us any chance to achieve those 17 goals, which everyone's saying are now off track. But I think connectivity and going digital is the only chance that we have to actually be able to achieve those goals.
Well, look, thank you very much, Doreen. What you have just said, I wouldn't say it's music to my ears, but it definitely echoes a number of priorities that we have also identified and on which we are trying to work. As I mentioned to you very recently, we have also done this work of looking inside Microsoft how we are contributing to the SDGs and how we can better contribute to the SDGs, because as you say, these are the Sustainable Development Goals. These are goals that the entire society should embrace and should try to achieve. And so we try to do what we can to contribute to the achievement. Look, you have also talked about technical connection. You have talked about content, local content for local population. You have talked about safety, security. All those are issues on which you are working and on which we too are working on our side. And we are keen to contribute and continue working with you, cooperating with you on trying to make those realities, those goals happen and become reality. So it's been a fascinating conversation with me, as always, with you. I'm always very happy to hear you talk about those very important issues for us. And as I just mentioned, we are also keen to continue cooperating with you to try to address them. So thank you very much. Thank you. And I wish you a very good rest of the day. Thank you, Doreen, and talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.